Colonel McCoy, because he has the ear of a 3-star general. So McCoy can tell Twining, hey, they're not telling us about these radar cases. Actually, they did, but they're just mentioned briefly in the flying discs over the United States that Schuligan sent up there.
When did they decide they were only concerned with over the continental United States versus?
They never decided that. Nobody decided that. That was just so.
We can't point fingers.
Loading is a chatterbox. Loading is a chatterbox. So he tells McCoy this, and that's what Billick says. He says, I don't know how Loading could ever keep a secret. He's a chatterbox. That's where Billick's the unofficial historian of especially the early days in T2, TID, and ATIC. And Billick said, yeah, I saw where they were investigating cases up here. He said they had their own building and everything was hush-hush. And when I told him that Loading was the initiator of the whole project, Billick said, that guy is a chatterbox. He couldn't keep the secret if his life depended on it.
Well, so, how do you get a clearance? Yeah, we always said loose lips sink ships.
Right. So Loading tells McCoy about this. I don't know who called down to the Pentagon. I don't think it was McCoy. It was probably somebody in Twining's offices that told them in the Pentagon, what's this about these Japanese cases? So you could just, now we have Dr. Carroll's files. So almost immediately after they get this telephone call, they're running around like crazy in the Pentagon to put away a summary of these radar cases for McCoy. So that's probably what happened. At the same time, of course, like I said, the Army Air Force is split off as a separate service, the U.S. Air Force.
From the Army. From the original Army, right?
Right. The CIA is formed, and it's not Captain Hillenkotter anymore. It's Admiral Hillenkotter takes over the CIA, and he becomes the Director of Central Intelligence. He doesn't have a little group now. He has a big group. One of the first things he does is write a letter out to Wright Field. And he says, listen, you guys got all the engineers, scientists, and intelligence guys that do technical intelligence. He said, I don't want the CIA to form a technical intelligence group here. You guys are my technical intelligence group. You guys in the Navy Bureau of Aeronautics, the technical intelligence guys in that outfit are my technical intelligence. He says. So he tells Wright Field that, hey, you're not in the CIA, but you're working for me, because I'm not going to duplicate your efforts here. So Hillenkotter, that's his thing. In the meantime, Bernard Baruch has gone around to just about everybody, including Hillenkotter. He and Hillenkotter are friends. Bernard Baruch Jr. is a friend of Hillenkotter's. And he's gone around to the Secretary of the Air Force. He's gone around to all these Army, Navy, Air Force, FBI, Department of Defense. Yeah, that's the other thing that was set up in September, Department of Defense. So he's talked to all these people, and they're starting to work on his reporting system. And Hillenkotter writes to the Secretary of the Navy. He says, "This is a good reporting system. I'm happy to see that Bernard Baruch is working on this. Bernard Baruch Jr. is working on this, and everybody thinks it's great. You know, it's going to be out there pretty soon."
Well, is the Department of Defense over everything or no?
Yeah, they
over
are.
Everything. Okay.
Right. Now by September, by September now, Colonel Garnett says, "I think I ought to send a formal letter to the FBI because they've been investigating cases since the beginning." So he sends a letter, and can you cooperate with us? We like what you're doing so far. Can you keep it up? And he mentions to somebody, he says, "I'm not going to chase toilet seats anymore. We'll have the FBI do that." That was a mistake. Word gets back to Hoover of what Garnett said, and he says, "I'm finished with UFOs." Like I said, he was angry about being pushed out from the Japanese balloon bomb investigation. So he says, I'm not helping them. He says, "If we get a UFO case, you write the Air Force and tell them, give them the particulars, but don't investigate it. Let them investigate it." He said, "I'm not chasing toilet seats." So that's where the FBI leaves the investigation, and it's unfortunate because they would have been a big help. They get involved later, about 1950. They can't stay out of it.
So the Department of Defense is 18 September 1947, and they become like a joint Department of Defense with the Army, Navy, Air Force, and the Marines fall under the Air Force. But it says National Guard, but where's the Coast Guard? It doesn't fall under DOD?
The Coast Guard, the Coast Guard falls under, in peacetime, they fall under, like now they fall under Homeland Security. But during war, they fall under the Pentagon.
Interesting. Okay. All these things.
During the Second World War, they fell under they worked with the Navy. So during wartime, they fall under the Department of Defense. But during peacetime, they've been under Homeland Security or Department of the Treasury or Department of Transportation. So they're like they get kicked around from one place to another.
Well, do we say it's the DOD is an executive branch of the federal government, because that's the way it's written? But DOD, largest employer in the world. But we had it all happens in 47. So isn't that odd that we go on record with UFOs when we start getting organized in our country with Department of Defense, CIA, or all the national intelligence.
All this thing was planned for years. All this splitting off the Air Force, starting the Central Intelligence Agency, and putting everybody, all the military organizations under DOD, because before that, the Secretary of the Army, Secretary of the Navy were cabinet guys. They were cabinet. But now Department of Defense is the cabinet officer, and Secretary of the Air Force Navy and Army they don't go to cabinet meetings anymore unless they're having everybody go there. They are no longer primary cabinet officers.
Well, would you say that it goes with Harry S. Truman signing the National Security Act?
Yes, that's exactly what it goes. That's exactly what it goes with. This is in planning.
Okay.
This is in planning. So,
so that's July 26, 1947. But that still, it didn't go in until after the sighting of Kenneth Arnold.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with Kenneth Arnold, though. It's already been in the planning stage. Yeah, it's already in the planning stage long before Kenneth Arnold.
With President
in the planning
Truman.
stage right after, in the planning stage after the Second World War is over. So,
all right, we need to document all that because it's like saying who created the chicken or the egg sort of thing. But in ufology, we're trying to build a timeline for all of us, especially all you important people that are by invitation only.
I have a timeline that I guess maybe Dolan started it.
Okay.
But George Everhart has made it. He just increased it like about 100 times. 100 times. And then he gave it to me, and I started putting stuff in there. I'm up to 200, and my timeline is 250 pages, and it's just up to 19. I combine Everhart's timeline with Richard Hall's UFO evidence timeline and my own timeline, so we're up to over 250 pages just to get to 1964.
Whoa, that's excellent coverage there. So Richard Dolan's second volume series, UFOs and National Security State, you guys that are just historical researchers by invitation only, you guys do recognize his Amazon book, UFOs and National Security State, the cover exposed.
Well, I think Everhart looked at that and he said, this is a good idea, but he says he's got a lot of things that are kind of iffy and
okay, so that's why Richard's got to be a stickler on what he calls, scientifically, peer review and research with people like Corey Good and Emery.
He had all kinds of things that in his timeline that don't really have much to do with UFOs. So
Ward Everhart.
Yeah, so Everhart took it and said, I'm going to smooth it out and add to it. And like I said, it's over 10. His thing goes all the way to the current thing. So he's probably over 300. Probably over 300 pages. I'm just going to 1964.
Well, Everhart, now explain that name, because I'm not familiar with all you researchers. I should be, but I'm more with the timeline or what's happened.
He's a member of CUFOS. He's an officer in CUFOS.
Was he interviewed by Richard Dolan for his book, Richard Dolan's book? Did he
spend
time researching?
No.
Interesting.
No.
So you think some of us
Everhart just saw the timeline and said, I think I ought to do that. I think I ought to expand that and clean it up, and so that's what he did.
Okay. Well, tell us his complete name and how we would research him as a historian, a ufologist. Is he still alive?
George Everhart. Yeah, he's still alive. That's where I got his thing. He said, "You want to see this?" He said, "I know you're interested in this kind of thing." So he sent me You know, it was maybe